So it's 10:36 on a Monday in June, and I should be teaching English class right now to the summer school English class I was supposed to teach for the month of June, but I'm here making this video instead. And the story behind that is one you're going to want to stick around and hear. But before I get into it, I'd like to ask you to please consider supporting my work on this channel. If you value this kind of work, deep, in-depth explanations about what's going on in our schools in terms of the curriculum, in terms of what your kids should be learning that they're not learning, I hope you will consider supporting. Either subscribe to the channel, support me through my Patreon account, which is listed in the description box below, or PayPal, or through my locals community, which I actually would love you to join. We're a great group of people, and I help people more directly with education issues, even understanding what's going on in education right now through my locals. So I hope you will join. I have 2 Zoom calls a week, and we talk about all this stuff in depth. But let's move on. Why am I here, and why am I not teaching my English class? Well, when I got hired to teach this class, after a fairly brief interview, actually, at a place where I went to volunteer locally in the city where I live, I was given free rein to create a curriculum for English language arts. I was told the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students were behind due to the pandemic learning loss, and probably also were just behind in general and needed remediation. But they were bored, and it was going to be a virtual class, and I needed to make it accessible virtually and something I could do with Google Classroom and so forth. I would need to make sure I covered reading comprehension, critical thinking, writing, grammar, spelling, and vocabulary all in 4 weeks with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who would be in a class of mixed age. So to me, it seemed logical to do a novel study because when you take on one book, you can do all of that. I chose this book, Gregor the Overlander, as you can see on the screen, and I chose Writing with Skill, which is a curriculum created by Susan Wise Bauer of the Well-Trained Mind, and it teaches kids critical thinking and writing at the same time. That's what I love about it. I set up a Google Classroom for my 2 sections of kids. I put in writing lessons where for each chapter, they would have to answer the following questions in brief notes, just little phrases, not even complete sentences. Who are the main characters in the story? What is the problem they have to solve? How did they try to solve it? And does it work? And then from those notes, they were to write 2 summary sentences in proper English with correct spelling, grammar, punctuation, etc. for me to review, summarizing each chapter. So for 2 chapters, they'd have 4 sentences and so on. The book is divided into parts, part 1, part 2, part 3, and so forth, each of which contain about, I think there are 3 or 4 parts of the book, but they each contain about 9 chapters. This is rated as 4th grade book. 4th through 7th grade can access this book. The writing is fairly large, as you can see. I wasn't so concerned about the difficulty of the book as the depth of the story and the complexity of the characters, even told in a simple way. I wanted a story where there was equal representation of male and female characters who were strong and relatable. I wanted to make sure there wasn't a whole lot of obvious racial overtones. I didn't want struggle literature. I didn't want to be all the things that I assumed they were already getting in school if they were reading at all. I just wanted a great story. And the reason I chose a novel fiction is that through fiction and through engaging with characters and dialogue that are different from ourselves, we can think critically about what would I do in that situation? What if I were lost? What if I had to find my sister? What if my dad were missing? What if I encountered people and creatures and things I'd never seen before? What would I do? These are the kinds of questions I wanted them to ask, and we were going to discuss in class. Did I think it was a little ambitious for this group? Possibly, but I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I knew that as 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, they should be able to do the work that I was giving them, and that I would scaffold it to make sure they could do the work I was giving them. I would meet them where they were, and I would comment on their work and help them improve as individuals by doing all the same assignments. And by choosing an easier book, that way I felt like 6th, 7th, 8th grade, wherever they were, they'd be able to do it at their level. And I wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel for each kid. I could engage with them during the online class and have discussions rather than just set them to doing something online individually and then be a warm body in the seat, making sure they were doing it in theory by checking off a box that they'd done it. That struck me as not really improving upon anything they got in school all year. And if they have to sit in front of a computer, at least let's engage, right? So that's what I did, and I was given free rein to do it. Now, at least 2 weeks, if not longer, before the class began, I let the director of the program know what my plans were in some detail. I showed her the book. I told her what I planned to do. And furthermore, I told her I had crowdfunded the book because I wanted to hand each kid, or at least make accessible to each kid, a physical copy of the book because I wanted to teach them to close read. Part of reading comprehension is not just finding, skimming to find out the answers to who, what, where questions, but also really underlining and asking questions and why did the character do this? And what's gonna happen next? Make predictions and so forth. I wanted to teach them to close read because that's a skill that will help them throughout the rest of their schooling, high school, even college, if they decide to go. It's just an important thing to know how to do when you're reading something that's unfamiliar to you. And I wanted them to actually look up the vocabulary words and write down the definitions, not just do everything online. And oftentimes, if you read online, you can just highlight a word and it magically tells you the meaning of it, and you don't have to look anything up in the dictionary. So I wanted to make things a little bit old school so they could learn some real learning skills. I had a sneaking suspicion they were behind. So I gave her all this information, and the response I got back was, you don't need to tell me all these details. It's fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. I told her I crowdfunded the book, and she said, oh, wow, I should put you on my fundraising team. So I thought I had approval. I sent this link that you see in front of you about the book. And as you can see, it is a book that is a fantasy book. There's no magic in it, though. It all takes place under the actual ground using creatures that actually exist, like bats and spiders and cockroaches and humans. It's just that they've evolved differently because they live exclusively underground where there's no sun. So there's actually a little bit of scientific knowledge involved. In fact, the kid's father was a chemistry teacher. The way he gets through this adventure is by forming relationships and friendships with people he's never met before, having to navigate those kinds of relationships, having to be tolerant and understanding without shoving it in their face that he's being tolerant and understanding or that they are being tolerant and understanding of him. And he's learning as he goes. He's also learning some science as he goes, although it's quite subtle. Regardless, there's no magic in this. Now, who were the kids? The kids were supposed to be 20 kids, 10 in each section, 2 sections. 10 to 11:15 and 11:15, or 10 to 11 and 11:15 to 12:15. And there was a parent orientation that was mandatory. The parents were supposed to come. Not everyone showed up, even though it was mandatory. The parents who did come heard me introduce myself and heard me talk about the book, explain what I was going to do as I just did here, and tell them why. I got a lot of nodding. I got even people in the comments saying, oh, we're going old school. This is great. So I thought, okay, I'm on the right track. Certainly no one registered any concern. I said that they didn't have to worry about the book. It was free. By the way, the class was also free. This is being sponsored by some of the kids' schools, a local Christian school, and also there was grant money apparently to take care of some of the other kids who signed up for this free summer enrichment program. So everything was free. It wasn't going to cost anybody anything except to go physically pick up the book at a central location that was, I was told, in their neighborhood or near to where they lived. And then the most they'd have to have is notebook, paper, pencils, maybe a dictionary. But if they had to use online, who am I to quibble? Okay? So, no negative feedback at this point. I started the class last week. Monday, obviously no one has the book. I had to drop it off. I read the first chapter to them. Mind you, I had 3 or 4 kids show up in one section and maybe 5 or 6 in the other. And I thought maybe it's the first day. This is how it is, right? Even though it was a rule to have their camera on, they wouldn't have their camera on. There wasn't a parent in sight to supervise. I understand that. They're back at work. But nevertheless, I also didn't choose to be online. I'm not one of those teachers that says, I'll only teach this online. In fact, I said I'd teach it in person. They said, no, it's contracted for online. Okay. So I made the best of it. They wouldn't put on their cameras. A couple kids did. I kept insisting they put on the cameras, etc. Halfway through the first class, I had to stop everything and ask them if they understood why we study ELA at all. And I explained to them how it's important to do all the things I explained to you here in this video. And I seemed to have some buy-in because a couple kids nodded and so forth, but their questions reflected that they didn't read. So I asked them, I said, do you read? No. You don't read any books? No. Do you read any magazines? No. Do you read comic books? No. No reading at all. 0 reading. 7th and 8th graders mostly. I think there were a couple 6th graders. So then I asked them if they understood why it was important to read. They just shrugged. I said, do you understand why it's important to learn to write? The only answer I got was, so we can fill out a job application? Yeah. Okay. So I told them where to get the book. They said they would get the book. Next day rolls around, no book. There were like 3 kids who got the book. 1 kid, actually 2 kids were doing the work exactly on schedule. In fact, ahead of schedule. They were reading ahead. They were doing the work. And while I could tell they were way behind grade level, they were trying. They were really, really trying. They were doing the work, participating in class. One was actually turning in work. The other one was not. Not sure why, but none of the other kids were turning in work either. So I had one child turning in work in detail, exactly what I asked him to do. And like I said, the mistakes he was making were indicative of someone who was way behind his grade level, but he was trying and he wanted feedback and I gave it to him. And that's what I was there for. So I made the lessons easy enough for him to do and reveal where he needed improvement. And I knew that at 4 weeks of doing this, he would make significant improvement. I wanted all the kids to have that, but they weren't doing the work. I kept hearing, my dad is pissed that he has to go get a book. My mom wants to know why they have to get a book. And I said, well, it's free. You don't have to pay for it. Oh, it's free? Yes, it's free. We said that. We explained that to everybody, just like the class is free. Oh, okay, I'll tell him. Still never got the book. Long story short, minimal participation. I even tried to make a Kahoot game to play with vocabulary. And I told them, I said, I can make much more fun games if you guys have read this story, because then we can put in more details. And they just shrugged and didn't do it. So one girl actually said, this class needs to be more entertaining. We need more games. No recognition of the fact that they're all way behind. I'm sure their test scores reflected. I'm sure somebody somewhere knows that they're way behind. In fact, some of them were forced to take this class by their principal of the private school because they were so behind. They said, if you don't take this class, you're not going to get the electives you want next year, or whatever. It was like a condition of them doing what they wanted next year. So it wasn't news to them that they needed this help. Well, this class needs to entertain me. This is boring. We don't read. I don't read books. Okay. Nobody came in. I gave the feedback to the director. She said, oh, yeah, this is to be expected. That was surprising, but okay. But still didn't say to me like, well, I'll get with the parents and tell them that, they need to get with the program, or we need to do something, or get the books to the kids if the parents aren't going to do it. Put the kids first, etc. No, nothing like that. She just said, we're going to meet over the weekend and discuss whether we even continue with this class. By the way, the math teacher is getting similar feedback. So it wasn't just me. It wasn't just, Deb created something that these kids can't access. So yesterday, I'm already having the weekend from hell. Not going to go into that, separate story. I get a text, can you talk? It wasn't an optimal time, but this is my boss, and I was supposed to come teach today, so I knew they were discussing the continuation of the class. I probably better talk to her. So she says, I've spent since 4 o'clock this afternoon, it was now 7, on the phone calling parents. I've called every single parent, but I've left voicemail messages for all of them except for 4. I've spoken with 4. And I thought, that's interesting. Why does it take 3 hours to leave voicemail messages? But whatever. Just continuing. I mean, I guess between that class and some other classes she's doing, might have taken a long time to leave voicemail messages. But regardless, 4 people she reached. First thing she says is, well, the parents have a problem with the book because it conflicts with their Christian values because it's got magic and the occult or whatever. I was like, but it doesn't. And mind you, I sent this information to her like 2-3 weeks ago. I said, but it doesn't. And she goes, oh, it doesn't? And I was like, no. It just goes to a world underground where the creatures are different because they live underground. So things live underground. They're different from above the ground. And she's like, oh, I really better read this book. I'm thinking, nah, you could at least read the description of the book because you're the director of the program and I gave it to you weeks ago, but you gave me free rein to do it. And if you're getting complaints from the parents, it might be good to say, well, I'm not sure about that at least because I'm not an idiot. I don't choose books about magic and the occult for a Christian school. I didn't fall off the turnip truck yesterday. So I said, no, it isn't. And she's like, okay, well, then the other parent said, why are we doing a book? Why are we doing a book study? And I'm waiting for her to say, and I explained to them, ... No. And then she says, because, they don't do this in school. And I'm thinking, I know. That's the problem. They don't do this in school. They don't read fiction. Ever since Common Core, she goes, they just read passages and answer questions. And I'm like, and they don't read. That's your red flag right there. They just read passages and answer questions. And how's that working out for you? How's it working out for them? It's not. That's why they're in this class. You see, the definition of insanity is continuing to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results, isn't it? Isn't that one of the definitions anyway? Okay, well, so she says that, and I said, yeah, okay, but see, I thought we were trying to remediate, and I've got to accomplish in 4 weeks all these things. Yeah, but the parents just want to know why we're not just teaching them grammar. I said, what grammar would you like me to teach them? Out of the blue. There are 3 separate grade levels. I don't know where they are individually or even as a grade level. You've told me they're behind. I can tell just after one day they're maybe 4th or 5th grade level, and I'm being generous. What grammar exactly would I pick? I said I had one kid do the work, and he's getting some things right and other things wrong. What if the other kids were doing everything right, but they just don't read? I have no idea. Reading the book and having them write responses to the book helps me know where they are in terms of grammar, and I can address it individually because I have that kind of time. I can go individually with their writing and help them improve their grammar. I can't teach to the whole class because Hello, isn't that boring? Isn't that more boring? To just teach your kid a bunch of grammar that they may or may not need? Well, what about spelling? Same story. I can correct their spelling or help them with their spelling in their individual pieces of writing better than I can just give them a spelling test. There are 3 different grades represented. I did this intentionally to cover all the bases as well as I possibly could with individual students at different levels. Again, this is how I was taught to teach. This is how common sense teaches me to teach. So you get the greatest degree of individualization with a standardized program. Every response I gave, I get this, well, you're preaching to the choir, but the parents, but the parents, but the parents. And she said, besides, and I said, have they even all picked up the book? Well, of the people she spoke to, I think maybe 2 out of 4 had even picked up the book. I don't think the person who said it was about magic had even picked it up. And instead of pushing back on that person and asking, did you even look at the book? She just took it as, oh, well, they said this and they said that. And then she says, and they really think it's inconvenient to have to go pick up the book. And I said, the free book that someone's providing for them. Okay. I mean, I said it just like that. Like, I'm sorry. I take issue with that. I hope everyone out there would too. And it's not that I'm asking for thanks. It's just I'm asking for parents to actually give a damn about their children enough to get in the car and drive a couple miles and pick up a freaking free book. Or if they can't, if that's massively inconvenient and the hours that are open don't work, then here's what you do. You open your mouth and say, I would love to pick up the book for my child. My work hours conflict with their opening hours. Is there anybody who could drop it off? And guess what? If they'd asked me to do that, I would have done it gladly. If they'd said, this person wants the book, but literally can't go get it because it's physically impossible, either I could have gotten it or perhaps one of the people at the church or somebody else could have delivered it. But no one even asked. It was just, it's inconvenient. So after all these things, and I'm addressing all of these objections, which I stupidly thought were sincere objections. Like, well, they say this, and then I counter it and go, oh, really? I didn't know. Okay, let me go back and talk to them. No. It was all leading to a foregone conclusion of, yeah, well, we're going to just need you to pivot. And I said, to pivot, I said, well, okay, the writing curriculum adapts to any reading material. I could switch to short stories or something else that they would like more. Well, do you subscribe to, ReadWorks? I really should show you guys ReadWorks, but I'm not going to waste your time with that. You can go look it up, readworks.com. It is a Common Core based, they won't say that it's Common Core, but it is, free online reading thing that gives you passages by alleged grade level, like as if I would know. If I assigned a 6th grade level thing, they probably wouldn't be able to read it. So which one would I do? And you assign the passage and there are questions after it, and they're reading comprehension questions. Reading comprehension questions, for those of you who are uninitiated in the Common Core framework, are just who, what, where. And can we get back to the fact that they can't read? Let's just go back to the fact that I could sit there and assign them these things. But again, what level? What level? The beauty of fiction is I can read this book. Clearly, I don't read at a 4th grade level or even a 7th grade level, but I can enjoy this book because it's a great story. In fact, I did enjoy this book a lot. When you read nonfiction passages, how much enjoyment are you going to get if it's way below your level? How much enjoyment are you going to get even if it's at your level and it's nonfiction and it's dry and it's about stuff and that's in and like I said, go look for yourself. I think they have some fiction passages, but they're really bland. They don't really ask for a lot of critical thinking. In fact, the questions don't ask for any critical thinking. It's all about who, what, where. And I knew immediately as she was telling me this was the foregone conclusion. I wish she'd just said this. I asked, do you want me to choose a specific curriculum? Had she said so in the very beginning, I would have said, well, that's not really what I do, but thank you for the offer. And I wish you the best of luck. And we would have parted friends. But instead, I had to say, this isn't going to work out for me. And as I was speaking and as I was explaining why it was going to work out, the anger built in me, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not really proud of my reaction, well, all the parts of my reaction, because I did end up hanging up the phone. I didn't say goodbye, but I hung up without giving her a chance to respond because I was so frustrated. And here's why. As I was thinking up how I really couldn't do this, I couldn't be part of the dumbing down process. I couldn't just be a warm body sitting there assigning them things to do online for the 900th time when this is what they've been doing for years. What I was seeing was not 1 year of learning loss. What I was seeing was years of neglect, was years of dumbing down, was years of catering to parents saying, it's too hard, it's too inconvenient, I don't want to do it, or just the presumption thereof. And all I could think of was my 2 students who were reading the book, enjoying the book, and making an effort. And how they were just going to be cast aside like they didn't matter. That just give them something boring and drab that satisfied everybody else, to keep the butts in the seat, keep the contract money coming from the school that was paying them, and keep the grant money coming from the government that was paying the grant money. And I should just be the warm body administering it. No pushback whatsoever. And I knew they're going to grow up and they're going to go out there in the world, and the possibility exists, no guarantees, but the possibility exists they will join the chorus of people blaming everybody else for their problems. Why? Because what were the parents doing? It's inconvenient. It's boring. You didn't make it entertaining enough. Well, I have to go pick up a book. That's not taking responsibility. That's not having any accountability for your child's own education, is it? And that was rewarded. Maybe virtual isn't the right way to go about it. Maybe we need to be in person, but then ask for that. Say, can you do it in person? I would have done it. I'm not afraid. That wasn't even asked. It's a cultural issue of people who are at the lowest common denominator being catered to and catered to and catered to again because it's easier than sticking up for reality. And nobody's sticking up for reality, and nobody's sticking up for these kids. And so I said, I can't do that. It's not going to work for me. It conflicts with my values. Sorry, goodbye. And I hung up. And I realized very quickly that was unprofessional. I shouldn't have hung up. So I said, I'm sorry I hung up on you, but I feel very strongly that we need to defend these kids and their ability to read and their ability to learn. And rather than just say, okay, well, I accept your apology, but I wish you hadn't hung up. Whatever. I got the nastiest letters back. We've all been through a pandemic. Yes, hun. So have I. So have my kids. We all have our problems. Every kid in the country's been through it. There are kids who are still managing to read books. They're still managing to do their assignments. They still have parents who are fighting tooth and nail for them not to have their curriculum dumbed down. And that's who I fight for. I fight for those kids and their parents. I am sorry, I can't save everybody, and I can't fight for the kids in the class who have the parents that have given them the impression that school is supposed to be easy. School's supposed to be entertaining. School's supposed to be fun, except for some reason teach them straight up grammar. Like that's fun. Anyway, that's why I'm not teaching English today. And I'm not sorry because I stuck up for my values and I would do it again. I still have this wonderful curriculum for this book though. If anyone wants to learn it, I'm happy to teach it to anyone who has a kid who wants to read this book and wants to improve their writing. Contact me privately. But these parents didn't want it. And I would venture to guess they are a microcosm of what's going on around the country. And what we have is teachers like myself who've either left or been demoralized and just going along with the flow because they have no choice because they need the paycheck. And that's why the people controlling the system are just continuing down this path. Because we got to keep the butts in the seat. We got to keep the money flowing. We got to cater to the loudest voices. So I guess my parting message to you parents is you need to be the loudest voices. If you actually want your kids to still use the schools you pay for, which, again, I told you I'm black-pilled about. I wish you didn't. I wish you would go find some alternative method. But if you do, you need to be louder than it's too inconvenient, it's too hard, it's too boring parents. Because they're loud. They're loud. They answer the phone. They make the phone calls. They show up at school board meetings and they bitch and they moan and they complain about how things are just not right. And ultimately, if they don't get their way, they just call it racist. So you need to be the parents who show up and tell them to shut up. Literally, to shut up. Because your kids deserve an education. And they're not getting it because of their kids and them. That's what I wanted to pass along to you. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. As always, thank you for supporting this channel. And that's the video.